and science, or math and ELA this year, students this year and next year will have an opportunity to appeal and say, if not for just a test, I would have otherwise graduated. And the legislature is poised to make that a retroactive appeals process all the way back to 2014. So this is a very big deal for us. And here you thought you were going to relax for the next few weeks, but if this hits the news in the next week or so, you're going to have some students, and I hope you'll be proactive in your work to reach out, get into your data systems and say, hey, we think there's 10 or more, or 20 or more, or 50 or more, or 100 or more kids in the last 4 years who otherwise would have graduated. I wonder if we can reach out to them. It would be great to get them in an appeals process. OSPI will build a very simple template for you, and let's get thousands of more kids that high school diploma that they deserve. And you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to pound it into people's heads until I'm off of this, out of this office here. Every time we deny a kid a high school diploma, it's $370,000 in lost lifetime income. It's another $200,000 if denying that diploma keeps them out of higher ed for an associate's degree or an industry-recognized credential. It's a loss of another $250,000 if that student would have gone on to get a baccalaureate degree. Every one of those kids in your data system that didn't get a diploma back to 2014, if they've not done something to affirmatively change that outcome, it's $1 million risk to them personally. And it's a $250,000 risk to taxpayers because we know those students are much more likely to end up using the social safety net, the criminal justice system, and the acute health care system. You absolutely change lives, and it seems so hard to see that at moments, because fidget spinners are taking our time, and bottle flipping is driving us crazy. But somewhere is a student who otherwise will have their life completely altered because we push them. And I'm pretty excited about that. There is going to be a budget soon. We'll pour through it. We are already doing everything we can to mine what we can based on the information that's been shared with us, but it's not a complete picture. So we will get that to you just as quickly as we can. Whenever they're done with the budget, and I'm pretty optimistic they'll get it done this week. But I'm also really excited about our work in ESSA. We're moving from No Child Left Behind to a new world of accountability. The entire theory of it was that No Child Left Behind went too far on the punishment scale. It created a culture of failure. The words used and the structures built into that law were all about identifying schools as failing schools in the bottom 5%. Sweeping money into those schools, probably through coaching or some other mechanism, and suddenly we were going to transform communities because a school principal got $30,000 extra dollars. You can laugh or cry. That's okay too. The entire concept of the transformation here is that we're going to restore opportunity and power to local communities. If we do our jobs right at OSPI, we will continue to chip at the forces even within this state who want to identify failing schools and instead say to them, no, this is about identifying opportunity gaps. You have to see kids in accountability, not institutions. You have to see kids in accountability, not institutions. And when you do that, you start thinking differently about those $15 billion we're about ready to spend. When you see kids, you start to say, what could I do with the resources I have? What could I do to flex up assessments? How could I change my practice? How could I bring cultural competency to my team? How can I bring that professional development? We start thinking about what's possible in terms of student success instead of how do I avoid getting that aggregate score that keeps me in the bottom 5%. Let's not manage to a data point that seeks to embarrass. Let's manage to students who seek opportunity. So that's our moment here in ESSA. It's going to be difficult. We're going to take a year, whatever is submitted here in September to the feds. I'll give it to the governor 30 days in advance. The governor will have an opportunity to review it. We're keeping his team up to speed along the way. The State Board of Education has a very powerful decision in terms of how to ultimately adopt the Achievement Index, the comprehensive score for schools. But as I said, we're hoping to blow the door on that concept that all of our schools are on some kind of array and we cut a line at the bottom 5%. We're seeking to use multiple variables, multiple data points to tell more complete stories about our students and our communities and our schools, and then really try to impart upon you that your school improvement plan should more accurately reflect the gaps that you experience. That is a conversation about empowerment. And when we do that well, when we focus on those research-driven variables that we know matter, then we can build future budget requests very specifically to those outcomes. So instead of asking for MSOCs, which are important, and asking for these other things which technically get us by, let's start asking for very targeted dollars to close gaps for our tribal students. Let's start taking the opportunity to go get resources that change the English learning opportunity for those who do not come to us with English as their first language. Let's be transformational in our accountability for kids, not because we're focused on institutions, which leads me to our vision. Our vision that I laid out a couple weeks ago was not meant to have the answers. It was meant to put out there very aspirational thinking so that we could start asking the hardest of questions. If we were a system truly competing with Finland and South Korea and Poland and Germany, would we tolerate 21% dropout rates? Would we tolerate our boys leaving our system at a rate 30 to 40% higher than our girls? Would we tolerate a system that tells kids this economy's booming and we need everybody through the entire vertical, but what we really mean is all of you to baccalaureate degrees? Algebra 2 for everybody was going to save America. And it turns out we employ a lot more people building high-rise towers in King County than the CEOs who sit atop the highest floors. And we employ a lot more Boeing machinists who assemble the 737 and the 777 than the engineers who make it. And absolutely no disrespect to CEOs and engineers, we need them. We need kids getting bachelor's degrees and graduate degrees and pushing themselves. But we forgot along the way that there's an opportunity for every single student. So we built a very narrow path but didn't put the support systems in place to actually make that path possible for every kid. Can you imagine if 80,000 students every year graduated ready to go to the UW? UW would never accept 80,000 kids every year. So we have to think about different pathways. So our vision calls for additional resources, no doubt about it. Get the instructional hours up something more consistent to our global competitors. Instead of 1,000 hours, let's get to 1,100 hours or more. Let's think about what a longer school day may be if that works in your community, or a longer school year, or stretching your existing instructional time differently. Let's invest in things like second language universally for every student if we're serious about globalized thinking. If we want to compete in the Western Hemisphere, let alone the rest of the world, we will not make every single student conform to an English-only instructional model. And then somehow in high school say, we were just kidding, now go learn 2 years of it so you can get into a university. If we're serious about global students being the absolute best education system in the world, not just the US, we will start to think like the best countries in the world. So that's the aspirational stuff we put out there. Transforming the high school so that there's really core credits in the 9th and 10th grade, but significantly blossoming and opening up the 11th and 12th grade for pathways. It means CT equivalencies, and it means strengthening our skill centers, and it means getting you capital resources to put comprehensive CT programs back in your high schools. It is ambitious. It is meant to scare you. But if all I did was spend the next 4 years saying to the legislature, you got to solve a court case, you got to solve a court case, they're going to quickly get bored with us, regardless of who's in control. So I'm going to have them put up a slide up here because I want to show you one example of the kind of stuff you should expect if we do all of this work well. We are talking about focusing on students, transforming our accountability system, getting more resources, and transitioning to the Every Student Succeeds Act. It is all about putting schools back in the leadership role, not corporate Washington, not the legislature in Olympia, not OSPI, but schools. And so here are some of the kinds of data analytics and some of the report card kinds of activities that you should expect going forward. All of the major metrics are on top up there that are likely to be in our achievement index. This happens to be a comprehensive high school, so there are others for elementary school. And you've always been looking at this, but you've mostly been looking at proficiency, growth, and grad rate, with some EL kind of infused. I think the new achievement index is going to look at other things, 9th grade failure or on track, depending on how you want to state that. Dual credit opportunities for students so that we can finally say it's not just about university pathways, but everything in between. But we're going to go a lot further than that because everyone will get a comprehensive score. We know how it works. We know what the feds require of us. But suddenly you're going to be able to have very powerful conversations in your building and in your district with your board about how we're doing across all those metrics. And then at the bottom, we're going to give you the ability, we hope, right down to the school level to select any one of those variables and then look across race, ethnicity, EL, poverty, you name it. And suddenly, many of you who have felt very comfortable being a 7.64 on the index and never worried about being in the bottom 5% have to admit you may have challenges with your EL population or special ed or your African American population or your tribal students. The hard part about taking responsibility in a world where we want the feds to go away and Olympia to go away and we want control in our schools is we got to be ready to take control in our schools and in our communities. So I'll conclude with this. At OSPI, we will not be afraid of the data. We will not be afraid of the data. We're going to give it to you in unprecedented ways, particularly in our rural small schools who do not have the resources to build these robust data systems that other larger districts have. We're going to do everything we can to empower you with the right data so you can have very different conversations in your community and in your buildings and in your classrooms. We will not be shy of the data. Our responsibility back to you over the next year and over the next 2 years and over the next 4 years is to see that in every school, mind the gaps using data, and begin to build very powerful budget and policy requests in Olympia that get you what you need to address those gaps. This is our moment, everybody. This is our moment to take back accountability in the state, to take back control of education, to have a positive message about what we want to do for kids, not institutions. I would suggest to you over and over and over again, if our message is only, we stand behind 9 justices at the state Supreme